Story 1. I live in London and have family, specifically my cousins, who expect free accommodation whenever they want to visit. Before my fiancé moved in, I would give in and stay at his place for a couple of days to let them use my apartment. We enjoyed being together at his for the whole weekend, so at the time, it didn't feel like a huge inconvenience. Still, he told me I should be firmer with them. The last time it happened, it was my cousin and her 15-year-old son. The night they arrived, I paid for takeout to be delivered for dinner. There was no real thank you, and the next day half the leftovers had already been eaten. I ate the other half and got harsh looks from my cousin, who hissed, "I was planning to have that for lunch." On their last night, we went out for dinner. When the bill came, I pushed it towards my cousin, thinking she might be considerate and cover it. Nope. Out came the iPhone calculator to add up everything she and her son had. And that's exactly what she paid for, nothing more. I got stuck with the rest of the bill, plus the entire service charge. I had also bought some groceries in advance, thinking I could use whatever was left the following week. But once again, nope. They took them all home with them. Half-eaten bags of crisps, which are called chips in other countries, bananas that probably bruised in their bags, half a bottle of milk, open packets of cookies, muffins, pastries, and half-empty boxes of breakfast cereal, all of it disappeared with them. After my fiancé moved in, my cousin messaged us asking to stay again. Since it's a one-bedroom apartment, I explained that we had neither the space nor another place to offer them. She then came up with an elaborate plan of sleeping on the sofa and moving all my furniture out of the way to fit an Arab for her son in the living room. My fiancé quickly replied with a list of nearby hotels. Earlier this summer, my sister came to visit, but her short-term rental fell through at the last minute. I offered her the sofa for the weekend, and she was an absolute delight to have around. She bought me breakfast, and when she left, she surprised me by leaving beautiful flowers in a vase along with a thoughtful thank you card. A few days later, I received another message from my cousin asking if she and her son could stay, pointing out that I had let my sister use the sofa. Once again, my fiancé replied with a list of nearby hotels. Then my cousin asked if she could stay on the sofa alone and leave her son at home. Guess what my fiancé replied with? You're correct if you guessed the same list of hotels. I honestly wish I were as firm as him sometimes. My cousin's sense of entitlement was honestly surprising. It was as if she believed that simply being family gave her the right to move into my home whenever she wanted, without thinking of the impact it had on me or my fiancé. Before he moved in, I would brush it off and tell myself it wasn't a big deal. Spending weekends at his place was fun, and I convinced myself that letting them use my apartment was a kind gesture. But looking back, it set a pattern where they started to expect it as their right rather than a favor. The visit with her and her son really opened my eyes. It wasn't just the ungrateful attitude or the way she acted as though the food was hers. It was the small things that added up. From leaving me to pay extra for dinner to packing away groceries I had bought for my own week ahead. She behaved as if my home and everything in it belonged to her. When my fiancé stepped in, things changed. He has a very straightforward way of setting boundaries, and I admire that about him. While I sometimes hesitate out of guilt or fear of seeming unkind, he has no problem being clear and direct. His response of calmly providing a list of nearby hotels was a turning point. It was polite but firm, and it sent the message that our apartment was not a free lodging house. The contrast between my cousin's visit and my sister's visit could not have been greater. My sister was thoughtful, respectful, and appreciative. She contributed by buying breakfast, and the flowers and thank you cards she left behind made me feel valued. It showed me the difference between being a considerate guest and being a demanding one. When my cousin tried again, using my sister's stay as an excuse, I was secretly relieved that my fiancé handled it. His consistent response, sending that same list of nearby hotels, was exactly the firmness I wish I had displayed from the beginning. It taught me a valuable lesson. Sometimes, being generous can unintentionally encourage others to take advantage. Setting boundaries doesn't make you unkind. It simply makes sure that kindness isn't mistaken for weakness. And with family, that line can be very easy to cross if you're not careful. Story 2. This story is about my aunt. She has always been a bit snobby, and that has shaped how my side of the family interacts with her and her side. My aunt has 3 children and has been married 3 times. All of the men she married had been past friends of my dad's, most of them from his college years. The 2 oldest children are my older cousins, both girls, from her first husband. The 3rd child, my younger cousin, a boy, is from her 3rd husband. My aunt and uncle have always done things for the benefit of just their immediate family, and I mean strictly their own household. While my 2 older cousins split their time between their parents, my aunt and uncle really focused only on themselves and their son. I could give plenty of examples to show this, but to keep this shorter, I had to leave some details out. My aunt and uncle treated my older cousins much differently than they treated my younger cousin. It seemed to affect them to the point that my 2 older cousins no longer want much to do with my aunt and uncle unless it is absolutely necessary. In the last few years, multiple things have changed for the family as a whole. My dad passed away when he was still relatively young. My mom, who had breast cancer when we were all younger, had her cancer return during the global health crisis, and this time it affected her bones. My grandpa also passed away in the last year. All of this has given me the perception that life is something to be cherished and is never guaranteed. I am saying this because so much has been happening, and certain conversations about wills have come up. After my grandpa passed, we began having talks about different things and what people would want done when their time eventually comes. Bringing my aunt and uncle back into the story now, apparently, at some point after my grandpa passed, my aunt talked to my grandma and brought up how she was the only one left, and that she would get everything after my grandma passed. First of all, I don't even want to think about losing my grandma yet. I want her to stay with us for however much longer we are blessed to have her. I do understand that these kinds of conversations sometimes need to happen, but I don't think I would ever say anything like that if I were in my aunt's position. My grandma told my mom that my aunt had said this. Apparently, my grandma's response back to my aunt was, "Your brother had a family too. We will not just disinherit them simply because he has passed away." Now, add this on top of other claims my aunt and uncle have made about the farm. They have said the farm should belong to them, and they mentioned how they would turn the nice horse barn that my grandpa built for my grandma into a cattle barn. In doing so, they would essentially prevent my mom and sister from using it, which was never the original intention. On top of that, my younger cousin, who, to be honest, doesn't fall far from either of his parents, has claimed that my grandpa promised him a certain amount of land. To put this in perspective, the amount of land he claims was promised to him is a very large portion of what my grandparents owned altogether. If my grandpa had truly promised him this much land, then he would have also tried to keep things equal for the rest of us. There are 5 of us grandchildren in total, and what my younger cousin is claiming would not have been possible to divide fairly among all of us. If the amount he says is true, then the rest of us would have been left with almost nothing, which doesn't match my grandpa's character. At this point, I know I am mostly just venting about my family. I also know there is nothing I can personally do about the situation, and honestly, there is no real need for me to step in. My grandparents already made sure everything was taken care of before my grandpa passed away. I just needed to get this off my chest and share what has been happening with my family. Story 3. I was accused of fraudulently impersonating an employee of a company I actually worked for. Years ago, I worked doing call center tech support for a legitimate US-based company. We served mostly elderly clients. The way it worked, they'd pay a subscription, and we were on call 24/7 as much as they needed. We could remotely access their PCs to fix them, log in to show them how to do something, low-level computer training, on par with basic computer classes you might see at a community college, etc. This service wasn't cheap, easily in excess of $100 a month, but justifiable given that most customers would call a couple times a week for one thing or another, and could take a couple hours per call. Several of our customers were deaf, and they would call us via a teletype service. For those who don't know, the deaf caller types via text chat or signs via video chat with a third-party service who then calls and speaks for them, relaying the message over the phone to the person on the other end. They are supposed to be impartial and convey messages word for word. It's essentially a translator job. You don't inject commentary into the discussion, just relay the message as precisely as possible. However, some of the smaller services only staff a few dozen operators and have frequent dealings with the same customers. So there's a sense of familiarity that can arise, and sometimes that impartiality is compromised. And it's a hard job to fill. You need someone who has typing skills rivaling a court reporter and fluent in ASL and willing to work crap hours for minimum wage. So sometimes they just put up with crappy employees to maintain staffing. A customer called us using one such teletype service for help removing some malware from his computer. Initially, all went according to plan. In the course of removing the malware, he needed to reboot his PC, which means he would be disconnected from the teletype operator who he was communicating with via that PC. So when the computer reboots, I reconnect to his PC, and he connects to the service again. This time, he gets a different operator, some guy named Jared, who he apparently had interacted with before. Mind you, the call was unnecessary. I can see his computer screen and everything he's typing to the teletype operator. I could have chatted with him directly through the PC, but it wasn't my call. So this Jared dude, serving as our go-between, decides I'm a scammer and he's going to warn my customer. He starts putting words in my mouth, things I did not say, completely unaware I can see all of this on the customer's computer. He remarks that he can't understand me through my heavy Indian accent. I'm a white guy, born in the US, and couldn't fake a convincing Indian accent if I tried. He starts getting mildly racist, explaining to Bill, my customer, that part of his disability is that he can't hear my accent, and if he could, he would hang up immediately and know it was a scam. Although to be honest, he's not wrong, just lying about my having such an accent. He keeps making these little asides with the customer, which I can see in the chat, telling him I don't actually work for the company I claim to work for, and warning him not to give me a credit card. I never asked for one. Bill's a subscriber, I've had his number for years and charge a predetermined amount monthly per our contract. He doesn't work for X company, they're just saying that, lying about you having a computer virus to take your money. That company would never hire a guy like him. Jared says. I get how he can think that. We've all seen this scam before. In the right context, it's not bad advice. But he doesn't have all the facts, like that Bill has been my client for years, that we have a contract, and he was getting charged the same if he called me or not. This wasn't a case of a customer returning some scammer's voicemail, he was calling a service vendor he had existing dealings with. So I open up Notepad on Bill's desktop and start typing to him. Sir, I can assure you, I did not ask for a credit card number, nor will I. I can see the chat screen and half of what I'm saying is not being conveyed at all, and most of what he is typing to you, I did not say. Also, he's not telling me what you're typing, or when he does, he's conveying it in a very hostile tone. He types back in the Notepad window. Yeah, you're talking to Jared. I've dealt with him before. He's a jerk. Sorry. He's supposed to quote us word for word, but I've had some suspicions about him for a while. Complained a few times, but nothing ever comes of it. So I addressed Jared. Hey Jared, you realize I can see Bill's screen as we talk, right? I work for X company, bro, and I can prove it. Dead silence. You want to put your supervisor on the phone there, buddy? I'd love to show him these chat logs, and of course, I'm recording the call on my end. I'll send him a copy. So Bill got his teletype service comped for a few months. Many apologies from the service. Jared got fired. I removed the malware, and Bill reached out to me via email thanking me a few weeks later, and he had a few stories to tell. Apparently he learned from the others at the teletype company that Jared had been up to some other shenanigans as well. Customers he didn't like, he would do passive-aggressive stuff like mess up pizza orders and dinner reservations, or accidentally transpose numbers so credit cards would be declined. or people would be unable to make a return phone call. He had a long history of douchebaggery that could be summed up to minor mistakes, but judging by the frequency and nature, must have been deliberate. His employer apparently didn't keep good records or retain call recordings for very long, so the company had a hard time firing him. This one time, he actually broke the rules really trying to help a customer. He honestly thought I was a scammer, and he was trying to do something good, and forgot that other call centers keep really good records and be willing to share them. What irked us the most wasn't learning of his other passive-aggressive stunts. You kind of expect crappy service from anyone you deal with on the phone. It was the white knight mentality. He was so happy to charge in as the hero, with no idea what he was getting into. He was going to save people from themselves by imposing his own superior judgment. He was actually exploiting a disability to do that. Had I not been able to see the screen, neither Bill or myself would have known what the other was saying, and this ignorant jerk would have been proud of his deception and actually thought he was a good person because of it. It's so condescending. Even if his intentions were good, I'm glad he got fired. And I just want to say, most teletype operators do their jobs extremely well. I've worked with many over the years, and this was an isolated incident in my experience. You usually forget that the person you're speaking with isn't the actual caller. They're that good. This was just one guy on a power trip, abusing his position for the sake of his own ego. Being the gatekeeper to other people's communications with the world is actually a lot more power than many people can or should be trusted with. Story 4. Cast. Me, my mom who is a good person, entitled mother, and her entitled kid. For context, this took place when I was 12. A few years ago, my apartment building was having a party. I don't remember why, but I decided to go anyway. Our apartment complex is the shape of a banana, no seriously, with a driveway that stretches all the way around it. The party was outside, and there was enough room for me to ride my bike. There were tables in the driveway with water, and at one point of the party, I was thirsty. I got some water and extended the kickstand on my bike and left it. I went to throw the water cup out when I was done. I went back to get my bike, but I couldn't find it. I looked everywhere, and I asked a bunch of adults where it was. One of them said my mom had taken it, so I went to her and I asked her if she had it. Me, hey, did you take my bike? My mom, no, why? An adult said that you took it. I didn't take it, but I'll let you know if somebody has it. I walked around when I found it not where I left it. It was like 50 feet away from where I was standing. Holy sheep, I got so worried. I started to walk toward the bike when the entitled mother walked over. Excuse me. What do you think you are doing with my baby's bike? This is my bike. No, it isn't yours, idiot. It is my bike, ask my mom. She starts to charge toward me. If you don't leave right now, I will destroy your bike. So it is my bike. At this point, adults start to congregate around us, and she realizes that she is screwed. So she decides to take my bike and make a run for it. Entitled kid who has been running around finally sees their mom running away. I am running after the entitled mother when the entitled kid dives for my feet. Entitled kid, stop, you don't deserve my bike. The mother gets cornered by the other parents who wrestle the bike from her and help me up from the ground. She ends up being banned from any partis meetings that the complex will ever have, and her kid is publicly shamed by all the other kids. Story 5. I work as a waitress, and our restaurant has a strict policy that requires masks while indoors if your meal or beverage has not yet been served, and again after your table has been cleared. The mask mandate honestly wasn't that effective in managing unruly customers because they would either argue that the mandate was not a law, so they refused to follow it, or claim it was unconstitutional, so they refused to follow it. Others said it was irrelevant since they would eventually be taking their mask off when their food was served, meaning they still would not follow it. While the presence of a mandate did not help much, the lack of one has made things far worse. People who previously wore a mask now believe it is unnecessary for their health or that we have no right to set mask wearing as part of our store policy. What these customers fail to understand, and what I'll emphasize again here, is that private businesses are legally allowed to set any dress code they want. Have you ever gone to a fancy restaurant that requires men to wear suit jackets? Or a grocery store that requires people to wear shoes? Yes. Where were the so-called freedom fighters then? Regardless of your opinion on masks, there is no need to argue it with me, either in person or online, because the owner makes those decisions. My job is simply to enforce them. Whether the policy says all customers must wear face masks covering their mouth and nose, or all customers must wear sleeveless denim vests, I would still have to enforce it. That is literally part of my job. At our restaurant, the in-house mask mandate remains firmly in place, and I spent my entire shift telling people to either comply or leave. Then I would have to tell them again, and then a third time. Eventually, I had to bring over our larger, more physically intimidating line cook to tell them. By the end of my shift, I had mastered the art of raising my hand authoritatively and saying, "Sir or ma'am, it is your choice whether or not to wear a face covering, just as it is our choice to serve you in this private business. Please comply with our dress code or exit the premises." A few people even pretended to call the police, but at no point did any real authorities actually show up. When my shift ended, I was completely exhausted and ready to put anti-maskers, health skeptics, and all the stress behind me for the day. All I wanted was to eat some banana oatmeal. On my way home, I stopped at the supermarket, which also still requires masks. As I approached the door, most people were not wearing masks at first, but they stopped before entering to put one on after seeing the sign. No problem there. However, the people right next to me, a mother with a classic Karen haircut and her teenage son, who looked about 15, did not do the same. The mother did put on a tattered, ill-fitting surgical mask, though she wasn't wearing it correctly. Still, it was better than nothing. Her son, however, did not slow down. He just kept walking straight into the store without a mask. The mother flagged him down quietly and said, "Jeremy, put a mask on, it's the policy," in a soft tone as though she did not want to anger him. He responded, "I thought we didn't have to do that nonsense anymore. I saw it on the news." His mom explained that businesses could still require masks even if the state no longer did. At first, I thought to myself, props to her. Maybe her haircut is misleading. But of course, her son couldn't leave it at that. He complained that he did not bring a mask and didn't want to walk all the way back to the car to get one. He also said there was no internet connection in the parking lot, so there was no way he was going to wait for her in the car. Though if he had a mask in the car, why would he have had to wait in the first place? The mom glanced at the policy, no exceptions sign, but seemed too tired to argue with him further. She gave in, and they both headed into the store anyway. A greeter stopped the son at the door and told him he needed to wear a regulation face covering. He ignored her, muttered, "Don't have one," and kept walking. The greeter called after him, but could not leave her post by the entrance, and eventually, the boy had wandered too far into the aisles to hear her anymore. I found the whole thing frustrating, but I was far too exhausted from dealing with people like him all day at work to take it on personally. I just focused on finding the right bananas and getting back to my car as quickly as possible. At the deli counter, I had taken a ticket and was waiting in line. Unfortunately, the mother and her son were nearby. Several people around us were glaring at the son and keeping a safe distance, but he seemed not to care, and neither did his mom. She was busy placing a long and elaborate deli order while he was messing around with lemons in a nearby display, picking them up and putting them back. On top of that, he was having a loud video call with a friend, talking at the top of his voice and carelessly expelling air in every direction. I tried to ignore it because I did not have the energy to deal with one more inconsiderate customer that night. Then it happened. He coughed maskless and directly on the lemons. I was about to say something, but thankfully, one of the deli workers noticed and immediately called him out. "Who's coughing?" he asked. looking around until he spotted the kid. "Hey son, you've got to wear a mask to be in here." The boy shrugged, but the deli worker wasn't letting it slide. He pulled out a copy of the corporate policy sheet to show him. The boy then looked at his mom for backup. She appeared genuinely embarrassed by her son, but not enough to hold him accountable. She quickly explained, "Oh, he has a mask, but he left it in the car, and we parked in the far lot." The deli worker was firm and said, "I don't care where he left it, it's the policy. Mask up or head out." He took a few assertive steps in the boy's direction, though there was still plenty of distance between them. That seemed to be too much for the mother to handle. She stepped in between them and loudly declared, "The store isn't allowed to have that policy anymore. Didn't you see the governor's announcement? It was never even a law, anyway." The deli worker hesitated. My guess is that he had seen the announcement and wasn't sure whether the store could still enforce its own rules. He also had a growing line of customers waiting, so he probably didn't want to argue all day. Before stepping back, though, he said something heartfelt. "Well, either way, you shouldn't need a law. What you're doing is selfish. My mother passed away from this illness. She never got to meet her granddaughter. She was only a little older than your mother. You should think about that." The kid laughed. Not just a chuckle, but a loud, full-on belly laugh. His mother pulled him away and told him he was being rude, but she didn't make him apologize, nor did she apologize herself. When it was my turn to order, I told the deli worker how awful that exchange was and expressed my condolences for his loss. Then I hoped that would be the last time I saw the family during my trip. But of course, luck wasn't on my side. Just as I was about to check out, I realized I had forgotten plastic wrap. Since I always need it for leftovers, I had no choice but to head back for it, even though I was close to leaving. Sure enough, when I doubled back, I found the mother and son again. They were at the end of an aisle, arguing with a store clerk. From what I could gather, other customers had complained about the boy's coughing, and it had gotten bad enough that a manager was called over to deal with the situation. The manager was a large man named Chet, according to his name tag. He was about 6'5" and at least 300 pounds, but despite his size, he seemed like a gentle giant. He had managed to get Karen's cart away from her, holding it off to the side so they couldn't continue shopping until her son wore a mask. But instead of being assertive, Chet was pleading with her, saying, "Please don't yell at me. I can't understand you when you're yelling." The mother was going off on him, claiming he was breaking laws, discriminating against her son, and harassing a minor child. She threatened that the news and the corporate office would hear about it, and that he'd be fired. She even told him he had better be careful because nobody was hiring right now. Chet seemed genuinely taken aback and tried to reassure her. "I am trying to help you, actually. Ma'am, I don't want to harass anyone. I want to work this out. But the reality is that you cannot continue shopping until your son follows our corporate masking policy, which exists for the well-being of the community. Please, help me help you." Meanwhile, as his mother loudly defended him, the son berated her. He called her embarrassing, said she was wasting time arguing with these people, and told her she was being foolish. He insisted they should just ignore everyone and keep shopping. It was baffling. Chet was like a redwood tree, and the boy was a toothpick. Yet the kid still thought he could push past and ignore the situation. At this point, I realized it was wrong to just stand there as a bystander. After everything I had gone through at work earlier, and feeling sympathy for Chet, I felt compelled to step in. Maybe it was the final straw after a long day at work. Maybe I was on autopilot, or maybe I just felt sympathy for Chet. Whatever the reason, my mask-enforcing instincts took over. Luckily, I was still wearing my work clothes, including my name tag. That small detail made what I did next more convincing. I walked over with my most authoritative manager of the manager swagger and said firmly, excuse me, you're creating a disturbance. Do we have a problem here?" Poor Chet, thinking I was just a customer concerned about the disruption, quickly tried to explain the situation and even attempted to pull me away. worried that I might be part of the family's party. But I launched straight into the script I had used all shift at the restaurant. Sir, ma'am, you have a choice as to whether or not you'd like to wear a mask. As a private business, we also have a choice to set our own dress code for customers. You have two options for how we can proceed from here. Before I could finish, the mother started talking over me while her son whined at her to stop engaging and just keep shopping. He even threw in this line, "They're literally lower than security guards. They're just the people who stack cans. Just ignore them." That was my cue to move to phase 2 of my script. All right then, you've made the choice not to follow our store's policies, and we've made the choice not to serve you. Please leave now, or you will be escorted out. If you leave on your own, you'll be welcomed back in the future if you're following the dress code. But if you're escorted out, a permanent ban will be issued. Please note, we have a clear view of your face on our security cameras, since you are not currently wearing a mask. That nearly made the boy's head explode. He started shouting insults and foul language at us. I stayed calm and said flatly, "My colleague is contacting security." Inside, I was nervous. First, I wasn't even sure if this store had security staff, and second, the boy was bigger than me. I remembered the news stories about employees being attacked or even worse over enforcing mask rules, and I briefly wondered if I should have stayed out of it. But then, surprisingly, the mother stepped up. Better late than never. She began pulling her son toward the door, insisting, "I cannot be banned from this store. It's the closest one to the house. Come on, let's go." At first, he resisted and even shoved over an end cap display in a rage. Chet, still calm as ever, only said, "Hey now, was that really necessary?" When the boy started knocking things around, the mother abandoned him completely. She hurried out the door toward her car, leaving him behind. For a moment, the boy kept stomping and kicking displays, but when he realized his mother was gone and he was facing consequences alone, his confidence crumbled. His anger gave way to fear, and just as suddenly as he had blown up, he bolted for the exit. Chet watched him go and then casually turned to me. "You don't work here, do you? I've never seen you before." I explained what I had gone through at my own job that day and how I felt obligated to step in. He sincerely thanked me, even offered me coupons, but he also gave me a chilling warning. Next time, I should not get involved. He explained that some of the people refusing masks had been completely unstable. Employees had been hit or even spat on. In fact, their usual security guard was out because he had been injured by someone at another location who refused to wear a mask. That was the only reason store employees like him had been sent to deal with the boy in the first place. Chet sighed and said, "This is what I've been dealing with most of the day. I don't know if it's because I seem calm or because I don't, but either way, I'm always the one they send to deal with these situations." I was so distracted by everything that I didn't even remember to grab the plastic wrap I came back for. I just checked out and headed home as quickly as possible. So, to everyone reading, stay safe out there. Wear your masks, keep your distance, get the vaccine, and look out for one another. We'll get through this eventually. Not as soon as we could, thanks to people like Karen and her son, but eventually.